Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to G Bear's Off-Grid Ways, a homestead in the desert. And yeah, it started off as clear blue skies today until those guys got up there and look what they did. All over the place. There's another one going across right now over there. Let me zoom in on them. See them? And this is what turned out from it. So they didn't like the idea that I shot a video and told people about them. So they came over us today and loaded us down with a bunch of this stuff. And all of this started off, you can still see the tail of it there. It all started off with little runs like that and spread out into these big clouds. Now, anybody out there that thinks that that's what a jet plane does, boy, are you being fooled. There's another one streaking across over there, just right below the one that just went by, running the same route and still tracking from place to place. And it's warm out here. It's not cold, but it's going to get cold because of the overcast. And all of this started off as little lines like that, joining all together, like there's one and there's one and there's one. They all came together and they turned into bigger clouds like that. All right. So we got that past there. Let's move on to the next thing. And I know I've done these videos before, but I did have a specific question from somebody who's going to be moving off the grid themselves and wanted to know about hooking up a wind turbine or a PMA, and PMA stands for permanent magnet alternator. They have PMGs, which are permanent magnet generators. And a PMG normally is 2-wire, a PMA is 3-wire. And what that means is there's 3 wires that come down off of that, come down through the pipe, and come down here into the electric room. So he wanted to know about a controller for a 1200 watt turbine. What kind of controller he was going to need for that, if he could use a 600 watt controller or a 1200 watt controller. Okay, so you don't want to use a controller. Okay, there are hybrid controllers like this that are wind solar hybrid system controllers. Okay, stay away from that stuff. They're not accurate. They don't work very well, and you never know what's going to happen in those. If you burn something inside of there, you can burn up your PMA or your turbine. So stay away from that stuff. Okay, so this is the way you really want to do it. With a 2-wire or a PMG, the generator, it has a 2-wire, a positive and a negative. It come down. Those 2 wires connect straight to your battery banks. Connect it to your positive and your negative. But connect it on the battery bank. See, I've got a whole bunch of batteries running here. You would connect the negative on the first battery and the positive on the last battery. So it goes through the whole battery bank and not just into one battery and then has to disperse out from there, because that's not a good way of hooking it up. You want to go across the whole battery bank with it. And the same thing when you're hooking up your wires to your inverters. You want to start, this one here is the positive. It goes on the positive pole down there. This one is the negative. It goes on the negative pole up there, first and last battery. So it goes across the whole sequence. So if you have a PMG 2-wire coming in, those just come down and connect directly to your batteries. And then what you would need is one of these. This is a dump load controller. Okay, it's got a solenoid on it. And what this does, and you can't just use a regular automotive solenoid. These solenoids are designed so that they can lock in and stay locked in for a period of time. An automotive one is so you turn the key and it jumps the solenoid, goes to the starter, cranks the engine, and then you let go and this disconnects. But you only want to use this type. So you can buy the whole setup just like this. I bought this one just like that on eBay. And this one is connected with the positive going down here to a positive pole of the battery. And it is best if you go, again, to the two end poles, but you're going to run out of places to be able to connect. So I've got this one running in the center. Okay, so you got your battery connection here. You got your positive and your negative. They are red for positive and a green for negative. I guess that's the wires they had. Okay, so the red goes down here, connects in, and goes to the positive pole of the battery. Then the green goes down here and connects to the negative pole of the battery. Okay, so that's where your battery connection is made. And for all of these types of controllers, whether it's a PMW or a MPPT, you always want to hook battery up first and disconnect battery last when you're working with your system. So remember that. Always battery is always first to connect and last to disconnect. So on this one, they're using the dump load for the auxiliary load, which every one of these has. They have that little auxiliary load. See, it doesn't matter if it's an MPPT or a PWM, you're going to have that little section there. And this is specially designed, and it's got different interiors than those do. So this has got to be a complete set for a dump load. You can't modify one of those to work like this. It won't do it. Okay. Okay, so now these two come out of there and they go to the solenoid, and these are the two that actually jump the solenoid, the switch that turns on the solenoid and makes contact from this post to this post. So this wire goes down to the positive of the battery, and this one runs over and goes up to a heating element. And yeah, this is a heat shield or a heat sink, as they would call it, and that's the way that works. Okay, so you got to have a dump load system when you're using a wind turbine, whether it be a PMG or a PMA. Okay, so I just went over what a PMG would be with two wires coming in, one to the positive, one to the negative of your battery bank. Now I have a PMA. Okay, mine is 1685 watts. So I have it coming into a thing called a rectifier, and this is a rectifier. Originally, this rectifier didn't come with a heat sink, so I had to get a heat sink, or I take apart electronics, so I save stuff like that. So I got a heat sink here that I fastened this to, and now this has got a heat sink in it, because these things will get hot in high winds, and they could cause a fire. You don't want that. You want to be able to get heat off. Now, before I put the heat sink on, I always had this fan connected, and this fan ran 24/7 all the time. These are the wires that ran it right here. Now, I got it disconnected now because I got a heat sink on there, but we're going to have a wind event coming pretty soon, so I'm going to be rehooking that up before the wind event. Okay, so remember, these things do get hot. Okay, so the PMA, the permanent magnet alternator, has 3 wires. So these are the 3 wires that come in. And you can hook those up in any order. There's no specific order. You don't have positive, negative, ground, neutral, whatever. These are all positive wires. They are all input wires. So I put lugs here so I could hook them to. And then I came out and I put 60 amp fuses on each leg. In case there's a runaway, the fuse will blow, it'll break free from this, and it won't set my place on fire and burn up my battery banks, things like that. But it will burn up the PMA because it's going to be freewheeling once those disconnect. You don't want to ever do that. Okay, so now those are the 3 that come in on a rectifier. And this is a 1500 watt rectifier. So you want to make sure you get one rated for at least the amount of output of your unit. Now, you could get more out of your PMA, so you want to go a little higher. So mine is a 1685, and the best I could find was a 1500 watt, so that's what I used. There's 3 connectors on one side. There's no specific order to connect on those. You put them in any order you want. Coming out, you'll have a positive and a negative. And they'll be marked on the unit here. It'll have a plus and a minus sign so you know which one is which. And those go to your battery. Now, because I wanted to know how much output and stuff I was getting, I bought this little gauge also. You can buy these online. And what you're looking at down here, volt max, watt hours, amps peak, watts peak, and amp hours again. So it keeps rotating through those. Now this is the amps that it's putting out currently. It's not turning because there's no wind. And that's the voltage in the batteries right now that this thing is reading. And there's the watts that the PMA would be putting out. And it's not putting out anything because, again, it's not turning. So when I come out of there, I've got the negative going up to the battery, and I've got the positive going down to the battery through a DC breaker here, so that if I need to disconnect it for any reason, I can flip that switch off and that disconnects it from the battery bank. If something happened to where this was blown and I didn't want to overcharge my batteries because it was doing something weird, I could just flip that switch, or it'd flip itself because it is a breaker. Okay, here is another type of rectifier. Okay, again, it has 3 connectors on one side. That's for the 3 wires coming off of your turbine, your PMA. And then it has 2 going out. And these are marked positive and negative right there at the bottom. Now let me get that focused. Okay, now this is a 12 volt unit, and this is 80 amp, 1200 volts. So this would probably work for most cases, but because I go a little bit higher out here, like you can see, I've got 1,000 watts, 1,018 watts out of that. I wanted to make sure that I had protection, so I went with a larger one there. But this one has its own heat sink built into it, and that's a good thing. You see the fins, that lets the heat come off of these. This is a backup right now, so I just keep that up here on the shelf just for emergencies. All right, so that's the sequence. You got 3 wires coming in. You're going to go through a rectifier that converts it down to 2 wires, a positive and a negative, that can be connected to your battery bank. Then you're going to have a dump load system, and then you've got to have something that this is going to dump the load to. So, yeah, I bought this heating element that came along with the dump load system. And this, I think, is a 500 watt element. So this gets pretty warm when I got an overload of power. The sun's out. The winds are gusting at 35 to 60 miles an hour. I got more electricity than I need. This takes it off. Okay, and you got to have a fuse in line on this one. I use a 20 amp for this size wire. But down the line, this is going to be eliminated when I get my whole system completed as I want it with the proper batteries. I need 6 more batteries down here. That's going to give me a total of 24 6-volt batteries. And I'm using a 12-volt system. The person that asked me about the question on this is using a 24-volt system. Whatever you desire, whatever you prefer to go with, 24, 48, it does not matter. If your output is 24, then you're still going to hook it to a positive and a negative at both ends of your battery bank, and that's going to go 24 volts through your battery bank, because it's just a difference on how you connect these together. If I was going to go with 24 volts instead of 12, I have this one with a positive to negative, then I would have to do the same thing, positive to negative, and I'd have a total of 4 batteries in a group, and then I would connect the positives of positive across those 4 to the next 4, and that would be a 24 volt system, because each one of these batteries is 6 volts, 6, 12, 18, 24. Okay, that's pretty simple once you get to understand it. Don't be overwhelmed by it. If you have any more questions, feel free to contact me and in comments below, and I'll be glad to answer those questions, specific questions for you. All right, everybody, that's all I have for today. I'm going to close this one off, go outside and look at the cloudy skies that we're not supposed to have, and say Thank you, geoengineers. All right. G-Bear reminding you, give me a thumbs up down there. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Again, subscriptions are free. They're not going to cost you anything. And no, you're not going to get spammed and all kinds of junk coming down in through your email. All you're going to get is notified when I post a video. Like as soon as I hit post on this, you'll get an email that says G-Bear has posted a video. All right, that's all that means. So don't be afraid to subscribe. G-Bear signing off.